And these are called dihybrid crosses. So all of the ones that we've done so far have been monohybrid, which means that we only looked at one trait. Like you either have brown eyes or you have blue eyes, but either way, it was both eye color. Okay, now we're gonna look at like you have brown eyes or you have blue eyes and you have blonde hair or you have brown hair. So we're gonna like combine two things together, which is more realistic for how the world works. So we're gonna do an example that is with peas, because Gregor Mendel was the king of peas. So we're gonna look at him and his stuff. So here's our example. Peas can be either green or yellow, so that's color, that's trait number 1, or they can be round or wrinkled, that's like texture, that's trait number 2. What is the result if two heterozygous plants are crossed? So how many letters will be in our genotype for this type of problem? Good, 4 letters, because normally it's 2, and now we're looking at 2 traits, so it's 4 instead, okay? So because they're heterozygous for both traits, that means that they're gonna be big G, small g, and they're gonna be big R, small r. Both parents are gonna be the same. When you write these, always keep your letters together. So like keep your G's with your G's and your R's with your R's. Otherwise, you'll get all twisted up and confused. Also, always write your capital letters first, like I've told you before, and always keep them the same. So like I decided that I was going to write G's first, so I'm going to always write G's first. You can write R's first if you want, but you need to keep it the same the whole time or you'll get confused. Okay, so now the trickiest part of this is actually like figuring out what letters to put on your squares, because you have extra letters now, so you have to figure that out. I don't know if you've like thought about this, but when you put the letters on the tops of the squares, you're basically saying like these are the possible sperm or egg that could come from this parent. Because remember, from meiosis, the sperm and the egg only have half the DNA of the parent. So each sperm or egg can only have 1 G and it can only have 1 R. And that's it. But it has to have a G and an R, because that's how meiosis works. Like when they split apart, it's like G, G, R, R, and these are 2 new cells now. Make sense? Okay. So what you can do to figure out your possible gametes is you can actually use a math technique, which is FOIL. Yay, FOIL. You guys know about FOIL? Okay. If not, you're about to learn. So what you can do is you can take your genotype, here it is, and you can use FOIL, which is first, outside, inside, last, spells FOIL. So first would be big G, big R. So I'm going to take that and I'm going to put it on my first square. Big G, big R. That's my first option. Then I'm going to do the outside. So I can have big G, small r. So I'm going to put that on my square. Oops. Then I can have the inside. So that would be small g and big R. Or I can have the last two, which would be small g and small r. Okay. When you do a problem like this, make sure that every square has a G and an R. If it has 2 G's, it's wrong. If it has 2 R's, it's wrong. And like, you're going to get the very, very wrong answer from doing that. So make sure that everything has a G and everything has an R. For this situation, both of our parents were the same genotype. So going down the side, it's going to be the exact same. It's going to be GR, 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 GR. They're all GR. Okay. Now comes the fun and satisfying part of this experience, where you get to actually like fill in the squares. So it's just like a normal Punnett square, but remember, keep your G's and your R's together. So this is going to be 2 big G's, 2 big R's. This is going to be 2 big G's, big R, small r. This is going to be big G, little g, two big R's, big G, little g, big R, small r. Then I'm just going to keep going and you'd keep going too. G, G, R, R, G, G, R, R, G, G, R, R. Just when you do these in real life, like on a quiz or something, don't rush, because when you rush, you write the wrong G's and R's or whatever letter you're using. The other nice thing is you start to learn the patterns, so it'll be always the same. Yeah, go ahead, Kaylee.
My OneNote just stopped letting me edit.
That's lame. Try to close it out and reopen it. It's working now.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now when you analyze these squares, the trickiest part is making sure that you count them all once and you don't count any of them twice, because you have 16 squares and you want to make sure that you count the right squares the right number of times. So usually what I do is I highlight them when I count them, which is what I'm going to do now. So my first option is that I can have some peas that are green and round, and that means they're dominant for both traits. To be dominant for both traits, all they have to have is at least one big G and at least one big R. So this one has at least one big G and one big R. This one, this one, this one, this one. This one doesn't because it has two small R's. This one does. This one does. This one does. And this one does. And that's it, because the rest of them have at least something that has two small letters. So now when you count these up, what you end up getting is 9. So this was 9 out of 16. For this one, I don't write percents because it's harder to get a percent out of 9/16. It's like 54% or something like that. So this is 9/16 are all dominant. Okay. Then we're going to look at the green and wrinkled ones. So they're dominant for color, but they're recessive for texture. I'm going to highlight them a different color. They have to have one big G and they have to have small R's. So this one counts, this one counts, and this one counts. So that will equal 3/16 have one recessive. So now maybe you're starting to see the pattern that's emerging, hopefully. Now we're going to look at the yellow and the round. So they have to have big R's, but small G's. So they're going to be this one, and this one. And that's going to be 3/16 too. And then finally, we only have one tiny little pea plant, 1 out of 16. That will be recessive for everything. 2 small G's and 2 small R's. Okay. The nice thing about this is like a cheat code, is every time you have 2 heterozygous parents, this will be the ratios you get. It will always be 9:3 to 3:1 every single time, as long as both parents you started with were heterozygous, which is like, yay, that's easy. So that's cool. Feel good about it? Not too bad, right? We're not going to practice any of these today. I just wanted to show you one. So once you feel good, we're going to go on to part 2 of this adventure we're on today, which is pedigrees. So it's the next page down on mine, but maybe not on yours. Greetings. Do you have a note?
No.
Okay, well, you can put your stuff down, but will you go get one because I marked you absent?
All right.
Do you know where to go? I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So guys, have you ever seen a picture like this before? Okay, some people have. And some people haven't. Okay, basically what this is it's a fancy scientific family tree that shows one trait being passed through the family. So that's what we're going to write for our definition. This is a scientific family tree that shows one trait being passed on. On a pedigree, you can only show one trait at a time. You can't show like multiple traits, just one. So if we look at this image, what's happening here is down the side, there's Roman numerals. It will always be Roman numerals. These show the generations. Okay, so basically this top row here, these are the grandparents. These are the parents, the aunts and the uncles. This is siblings and cousins. Okay. So the lines that go up and down show children. So these people up at the top, we would call them person 1, 1 and person 1, 2. How many kids do they have? 3. Why do they not have 5? Yes, because person 2, 1 and person 2, 5 are married into the family. That's why there's no down line connecting them to these parents, because these aren't their parents. They're just entered by marriage. Okay. These people are the children of these people, and they're cousins with each other. So this is 3 siblings, 3 siblings. These 2 people are cousins. Okay. Okay. The nice thing about this is that different shapes always mean the same thing. So squares are always males and circles are always females. If a shape is shaded in, that means they show the trait. So if a trait, I'll say shape actually, is shaded in or colored, the person has the trait. And that is important. Sometimes you will see other strange shape situations happening, and I'm going to show you a couple of them. So if you see a shape that has a slash through it, that means that person is no longer living. So this person is deceased. This doesn't mean that they died because they had the trait. Like in this example, they don't even have the trait. It just means that they're not alive anymore. Okay. If you see a person that's halfway colored in, that means that they're a carrier. Now, important that a pedigree does not have to show you if people are carriers. So I'm going to make a note here that says not every pedigree will use this. The ones we're going to use as examples today will not have half shaded shapes, but there are people who are carriers. But they can show it as half shaded. One thing I just want to mention, because I was grading some of the disease Punnett square things, is that for someone to be a carrier, they have to not show the trait. So for example, with cystic fibrosis, if someone has cystic fibrosis, you wouldn't call them a carrier. You would just call them a person who has cystic fibrosis. To be a carrier, it has to be like a secret that you have the trait. Like you don't show it. Okay. Okay. Also, sometimes you can see this situation. So normally children are shown with straight lines down, but sometimes you can see this slanty line. What do you think this means? Anyone want to guess?
Identical twins.
It is twins. Yeah, good. So this is twins. Toby, did you say adopted? So that would be shown like this if this is dad and mom, and this is a son. That's supposed to be a square. You would show that as parentheses around them, which is like, that is their son, but not biologically. This means adopted. Also, sometimes in super rare situations, you might see a triangle as a shape. And that usually means that the mom had a miscarriage of the baby. And so the gender was not determined yet or unknown. But usually you don't see that very often.
That means that the miscarriage baby had the trait.
Only if the triangle is colored in. But usually it won't be because you didn't know. Yeah. Okay. So now the cool thing about pedigrees is you can use them to figure out whether a trait is dominant or recessive. So we're going to go over here to the side, and I'll tell you how to tell the difference. So first of all, if a trait is dominant, it will be shown in every generation. Also, will there be carriers? No. No carriers. Why will there be no carriers? Yes, because if someone's heterozygous, they will show the trait. Just they won't be a carrier, they'll just have it. Okay. Also, in dominant traits, two parents who show the trait can have a child who does not. And what that would look like is you would have your dad and your mom who would not, or who would be colored in, because they have the trait. And their son, let's say, will be not colored in because he does not have the trait. Okay. So that means you can figure out what were the genotypes of the two parents. Exactly. So that square for this would look like you have heterozygous parents. They both show the trait. This would be your son, two small letters. In a recessive trait, this could never happen because if these two people had the trait, they would be lowercase, 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 lowercase. That means this would have to be someone who had the trait because there would be only lowercase letters to give, right? So this is only possible when the trait is dominant. On the flip side, recessive traits are the opposite. So recessive traits can skip generations. Which means like you have a trait, but your parents don't have it, but your grandparents do. And the example of that happens a lot is like red hair. Like you might have a friend who has red hair, but neither of their parents have red hair. You're like, what? And it's because it's recessive, it skips generations. And also like having twins skips generations too. It's like actually a trait, which is kind of interesting. You can have carriers. And for a recessive trait, you can have two parents who do not show trait can have a child who does. And what that will look like is you'll have your dad and your mom who will not be shaded in because they do not show the trait. And they will have a child who is shaded in. And it will look like that trait just materialized out of nowhere. But did it? No, because the parents were actually carriers. Yeah, they were carriers. So this square actually is the same square as the one I just did. Now here's your parents. They don't show the trait because the trait's recessive. Here's your recessive daughter. She shows the trait. And that will only happen when the trait is recessive. So this is how you can tell the difference when you look at the picture, which we'll do in just a second. Okay, the other thing you can tell from a pedigree is whether the trait is sex-linked or not. So if you go over here, there's one more little section. Remember, autosomal just means not sex-linked. So autosomal means not found on X chromosome. Sex-linked is found on the X chromosome. So for sex-linked traits, that means who will be shaded in more often, males or females? Males. So more males shaded in. For autosomal, will there be any gender that's more likely to have it? No, it will be about equal. Males and females shaded. When it's autosomal, you just use normal letters. Like R or whatever you want to use. When it's sex-linked, you use X and Y, and your X gets your like exponent superscript letters, whatever you're using. Doesn't have to be H. Hooray. Okay, ready to try some? Of course. When you are ready, no rush. We're gonna go all the way over back to the left to the picture we started with, and we're gonna solve the pedigree. Everybody good? Okay. All right, so we're going back over here. We're gonna look at this. For this one, I have told you that it's autosomal recessive. But if I didn't tell you, how could you figure out that it was recessive? There's two ways. Toby.
On the left, it skipped a generation.
Yes, on the left, it skipped a generation. Also on the left, what's happening with person 2-1 and 2-2? How do you know that it's recessive from them?
They don't have it, but their child does.
Yes, good. They don't have it, but their child does. And then over here, you also could kind of figure it out from here. Because what's happening here, every single person has it. So you're like, oh, it's because it's all small letters and there's no big ones mixing in. Okay. Okay, so when you solve this, what that means is to find the genotypes or the letters of all the people in the family. Do you think it's easier to start with the dominant people or the recessive people? Recessive, because there's only one choice for them. They have to be two small letters, right? Before we go any further, how could we know for sure that this is autosomal? Yes, because there's about equal numbers of men and women who have it. Now, this is an important time for me to say, like, I know that this is not 4 and 4. It's not perfect. It's not perfect on purpose because life isn't perfect. And it's not like 4 men, 4 women, check, autosomal, and like 3 and 3 is wrong. It's like not, or 3 and 5 is wrong. It's not like that. It's like if it's close, good enough. Okay. If it's really, really not close, which you'll see in a minute when we do the X-linked one, then you'll know. But if you're like, oh, men and women have it, it's autosomal. Okay. Yes.
Will there ever be a time where that'll kind of become like unclear?
Usually I'll show you one where it's like kind of unclear, but for the most part, and especially for the examples I'll give you, it will be clear. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So we said we're going to start with the recessives. The recessive people, are they shaded in or not? Shaded. So I'm going to say that this is blue eyes because that's just an easy example. So I'm going to do B's. This will be 2 small b's, 2 small b's. Everyone who's shaded in will have 2 small b's because they're recessive. Wow, look at that. We've already solved more than half of it. That was easy. Now comes the fun puzzly part where we get to work backwards and figure out the genotypes of the other people. So we're going to start at the top with Grandpa. He's person 1-1. He doesn't show the trait, so he has to have at least one capital letter. And his sons both show the trait, so he has to have a lowercase because he had to give a small b to this son, right? And this person also gave a small b to this son. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to have that child, and he has that child, so he did, okay? Okay, what about his daughter, who's person 2-2? What does she have to be? Good. She has to be heterozygous also because her mom could only give her a small b. And she doesn't have the trait, so she has to have a big B. All righty, what about her husband, person 2-1? Heterozygous also. How'd you get that, Liam?
Because they have a baby that has both.
Yeah, because their son, person 3-3, is recessive, so they both had to be able to give a recessive. Now, the last 2 people on here, can we know for sure what they are? No, because they could be homozygous dominant, but they could also be heterozygous. So all you have to write on them is question mark, big B question mark. You know the big B is there, but you don't know what's after. And you won't know until they have children one day, and then you might know, or you might not still know. And then we solved it. Hooray! Good job to us. Now we're going to try one that's sex linked. So if you scroll down, you can erase this orange arrow. It wasn't supposed to be there. You will have this X-linked recessive situation. Now, how could you know looking at this that it's X-linked right away? There's no women who have this trait. That's what I'm talking about when I'm like, it's not close. It's like obvious, okay? You also can see in this family that there's a lot of people who have died. Again, it's not because they had the trait or didn't have it, it's just that they're no longer living. For this one, do you think it's easier to start with the men or the women?
Is this one supposed to show carriers?
It does have carriers, but it doesn't have them shaded. But there are carriers in the family.
Start with the men
Good. Why, Zach?
because they have the trait and we know what their like genotype is.
Good. Yes, I agree with you. So we're going to start with the men. We're going to start with the men who are shaded in dark because we know that the trait is recessive and they have the trait. So they have to be X. I'm going to use, I'll use beads. We'll say it's color blindness. So this is going to be X, small b, Y. Everyone who's a shaded in male is going to be X, small b, Y. And then all the males who are left unshaded, what will they be? Good. Yeah, they're going to be X capital BY, X capital BY, X capital BY, X capital BY. Cool. Now we can use our men who have the trait to work backwards and figure out which women are carriers and which ones are not. So our first woman up at the top, the grandma, is she a carrier? Yeah, she has to be a carrier because she has two sons who have the trait, and those sons had to get their Y chromosome from their dad, which means she had to give a small b to those boys. Okay, what about this woman on the left? Is she a carrier? Yeah, because look at her son. He has it. So she's X capital B, X lowercase b. All right, let's solve their daughter too. Do we know what she is?
You now have 5 minutes to get to your first class.
She's heterozygous. How'd you get that?
Because her father has the trait, so she had to get a little bit.
Exactly. So she's a woman. She had to get her X chromosome from her dad. And the only X chromosome her dad could give her was a small b.
May I have your attention, please, with Veronica Gabello, please report to the attendance office.
Right? So we know that she got a big B from her mom and a small b from her dad. Because if she had gotten a small b from her mom, she would be colored in. She would have color blindness. Okay, let's move to the next family. This woman here, what do we think about her? This,
Carrier.
do you know for sure?
Oh, wait, no.
You can't know for sure, right? Oh, wait, yes, you can. Yeah, you can. You're right, Toby. Sorry. Because her son has it. Okay, good job. So then the daughter here, what about her? Do we know her? We don't know her. So she's X, big B, question mark, because we don't know. All right, third family. This mom, do we know what she is? No, right? Because she doesn't have any kids who have it. And also her parents aren't even on this pedigree because she married into the family. So we have no way of really knowing what she is. So she's X capital B question mark. But their daughter, do we know what she is? She has to be a carrier because her dad had to give her a lowercase b. So she's X uppercase, X lowercase. And then finally, our last two ladies on here, this woman up here, the mom, carrier or not? Carrier. And this daughter right here, IDK. because she could have gotten either a big B or a small B from her mom. Hooray! We did it. I want to show you one more that we're not going to solve, and you'll see why once you look at it, because you're like, whoa. But it is the pedigree of the royal families of Europe. Real life, real people on here. I'm going to tell you about them. So this pedigree is showing hemophilia, which is a blood disorder. The people who are green are hemophiliacs, which means basically their blood doesn't clot correctly, so they have a much higher risk of like internal bleeding or like bleeding from getting a like minor injury. So what happened was in like these ancient, not really ancient, but like, 1600s, a lot of these royal people were dying from like this blood disease, because this was a time when like people didn't understand genetic disorders or hemophilia. And there was a lot of confusion as to like why it was running in royal families. It's a recessive X-linked trait. How could you know that it's X-linked from looking at this?
No women have it.
Yeah, no women have it. And this one does show carriers. So you do have like Alex here is half shaded. She's a carrier. These people who are, their names are in red, they're the Russian royal family, the Romanovs, which if you're familiar with Russian history or world history, were all killed during the Russian Revolution. If you've ever watched Anastasia, which is an animated movie about a dark time of history, it's about that, those people. These people are question marks because we didn't know if they had hemophilia or not, because they were children when they died, which is very sad. And then down here, you can see Prince William and Prince Harry, who now both are married, so this is not updated. And then Prince William and Kate have 2 kids, which also is not shown here. You can see that the trait kind of vanishes, and it's because none of these people carried it, and it's recessive. So it hasn't come back into the family since then, because the royal people only like marry other royal people, so there's not a lot of diversity in the.
At this time, all students should be in their next period class.
But this is Queen
At
Elizabeth.
this time,
She's the Queen of England now. This is Philip. And if you trace this back, you will actually realize, maybe you already have realized, that they are actually distant relatives of each other. They're not like cousins or anything, but they are partially related. I mean, if you go back far enough, everyone's
And like
related.
their children are related, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird.
I mean, yeah, but that's what, for royal people, that was like what you did to like keep your dynasty bloodline or whatever.
So like,
Sorry, go ahead. You go and then you go.
do any of the children have like deformities?
No. They're normal. They're like actually like beautiful people. You like Princess Diana, this is Princess Diana. This is her husband. They're like regular looking dudes and ladies. Yeah, go ahead, Liam.
Who's Juan Carlos?
I don't know. And it's like very confusing about, I don't know. Liam's asking me about this. I don't know what is happening here. This is not a thing that happens. I don't know if just like they don't know who his wife was, or if he
just appeared.
materialized.
A God gave birth to him.
He's a clone. I don't know. I don't know about Juan Carlos and what his deal is. But yeah, IDK. Anyways, just a cool thing to look at. But alrighty, guys, here is the plan for the rest of class. So if you go back to your tabs, there's 2 things I want to show you. The first one is pedigree practice. That's what we're going to work on right now together or individually, whatever. And the one down from that is the review sheet. It is optional to do this one, but I definitely recommend it. I'll answer any questions you have about it in class on Friday or on Monday or in office hours, any of the above. Pedigree practice is for right now. If you don't finish it, it is due by Friday because we're going to move on to something new and exciting. Yeah, I think that's it. If any of your pages aren't showing up, like your actual images of the pages, let me know. OneNote has been a little bit glitchy recently, so just tell me if yours don't show up. Send me a reminder, whatever, if you're at home. Okay, Zoom, you're good to go. Thank you for being here. Have a great day. You guys, if you want to move around and work together, you can.
For some reason my computer isn't almost.
This Sterling,
Yay. Yeah, what's up, Griffin?
my worksheet isn't showing up.
Okay,
Good.
your pedigree one?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm gonna send it to you again.
okay.
Okay, it should be good there now.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. And guys, you can write